Just imagine, you are a boy orphan that receives a system of level God and is sent to the spiritual world for train your skills, but there you is hated by everyone. Well, that's how things happen in the anime we go to speak today called War God System. My name is Noah and welcome to the Noah Animes Recaps. It all starts with our protagonist called Lin. His dream is to be a cultivator. He has just turned 18 and was celebrating his birthday alone when suddenly someone appears behind the door and the atmosphere starts to get very dark. On the TV someone appears saying that a man who suddenly appeared was causing the disappearance of many promising young people. However, the protagonist is not afraid and activates his spiritual eyes to try to find out who this man is, but the man deactivates his ability, and when the Lin was about to call someone to asking for help, a man opened the door and took him to the border between the mortal and spiritual worlds and out of nowhere gave him the power of the god of war and also gave him a letter of recommendation so that he could study cultivation at the Spiritual World Academy. The man tells him where he had to go and says that it would be kind of difficult for him but that he would become someone very famous one day, and after that he leaves, without even saying why he chose to give him this power, and still says that at least he got rid of an unlucky item. The protagonist then feels deceived but is happy to be in the spiritual world, and then the spirit of the system appears who is responsible for guiding the newbies but tells him to be careful when using it so as not to attract attention from other people. And then a spatial teleportation channel appears and the spirit of the system says that there was a human trapped there. Lin absorbs the energy and a mind falls on him right away. He falls in love with her, and to improve the host's image the spirit the system gives him a set of skins, and now the girl is surprised. She introduces herself as Su Xiaolan and asks him to go to the gym. When they get there they are met with a lot of people shouting they were doing a test to decide their class and for that they had to touch the mirror and the result would appear. There are more than 10,000 new disciples who will be separated into 100 classes according to their cultivation base, and Xiaolan was sure that Lin would be the same class as her. And next to from the mirror appears a guy called Zueyuan who is considered a genius because he is just a new disciple and is in the 9th stage, and he also delivers a letter of recommendation from a true god. Everyone is surprised and the girls are all in love with him. The time comes, Xiaolan touches the mirror and everyone starts calling her a goddess, and she is also in the 9th higher stage. And finally the time has come for our protagonist. He has never cultivated but he was very confident, and to leave people impressed he already delivers a letter of recommendation that comes from the god Master Lu, and everyone's jaw drops. This god achieved immortality above the true gods. One of the teachers says that he studied numerology and that he was able to see that Lin was going to bring miracles, which shocks everyone spiritually, and then says this everyone starts shouting his name and he is super confident about touching the mirror, but after touching the mirror the teacher announces that he was in stage 0 and had the worst percentage in class 1 in 100,000 years, and to make fun of him even more he says that it's a historic moment and everyone is upset that he entered class 1 while he was in stage 0. It came time for a guy called Ludabeo, and the spirit of the system said that it detected extreme hatred against him and if he didn't fix this he could be attacked. The teacher announces that Ludabeo is in the lower 3rd stage and in class 100, and everyone starts blaming the protagonist and calling him a cheater. A guy appears in the crowd and calls him Pro X1. The spirit of the system tells him to back off immediately and Xiaolan runs away with him. In the dormitory the protagonist asks the spirit of the system if there was a way for him to fix all this, and the spirit says that he could raise his level. He could talk to the spirit using his mind and finds some missions to level up. One of them was to do random things like, for example, do a few push-ups, and he starts to do a few push-ups and then he starts to level up. He could do a push-up with one finger and continues doing more and more until the mission asks him to do 10 billion push-ups. It was going to take a long time, so he decides to ask Xiaolan for advice. But when leaving his dorm a guy tries to grab him from behind, but using his spiritual eyes he manages to dodge the attacks, and when he takes a look he realizes that this person was a chubby male and his level was in the 3rd stage, but the guy is very fast and hits him. Then he disappears and punches the guy. The guy's mask falls, and yes, it was Ludabeo. He uses a skill that couldn't be blocked by our protagonist and he wouldn't even be able to escape of this attack, but the spirit of the system says that he could melt the power of the talisman in a sea of energy. The guy throws the talisman at him, but at that time Xiaolan appears, blocks his attack and goes up and corners him. She is surprised to see that our protagonist is already in the 3rd stage. Suddenly Ludabeo appears on the other side and the guy she had cornered escapes. He almost hits her with an attack, but Lin blocks the attack and absorbs everything. Xiaolan hits the guy with an attack and he runs away, and the prota almost pretends that he was about to faint, but in reality he was fine. The next day at the gym he remembered the guy who ambushed him. This guy was strangely very powerful and he thought the teacher was going to investigate this, but the woman just congratulated him. Because he has become the enemy of the entire school, he uses his spiritual eyes to look around him and sees that everyone at the academy was extremely hateful talking about him, but he cares a lot and is confident to train and become strong. Then what guy arrives in the class and his teacher is a tree, and at that time a very beautiful girl arrives and Unlin couldn't see her level because she had a higher level than him. And Xin Yuan also arrives in the class and looks at Unlin, the tree teacher, wakes up and tells them not to do anything. Everyone closes their eyes and the protagonist uses his spiritual eyes and can see that they were cultivating, but he is indignant for not knowing how to cultivate either, but he believed he could do it in the next class. In the next class the teacher is a sword and the same thing happens again, then the next teacher is a fire, the other is a hammer, and everything happens again, and finally the teacher arrives who is human and he is very hopeful of receiving a worthy class, but the teacher just orders they play on their cell phone until the end of the class and the guy is left alone. The next class the numerology teacher appears and now he thought it would flow, but the guy just tells them to sleep through the entire class and write down everything they had dreamed of, and when he was almost asleep the teacher says that when he wakes up there will be a bloodbath. When he wakes up they are receiving magic lessons and the teacher asks Unlin to train with Zueyuan, and Xiaolan asks to go to Unlin's place, but the teacher refuses and Xiaolan starts attacking Zueyuan out of nowhere. The guy manages to dodge all her attacks with ease and then she uses a very powerful attack, but he creates a barrier. With his spiritual eyes our protagonist can see a flaw in Zueyuan's barrier. Xiaolan continued to attack his barrier but was unable to enter, but leaves Zueyuan very impressed as her spiritual lineage is very strong. She receives an attack from him that leaves her immobilized, pressing her against the ground. Our protagonist then goes up and absorbs all of the attack. Man and everyone are impressed that he comes out unharmed after receiving such a powerful attack. The protagonist makes an attack against Zueyuan but he dodges it and traps him with chains created with his power. The protagonist breaks all the chains and actually made a mistake his previous attack on purpose to break Zueyuan's barrier. Now he's in the 4th stage. The crazy man has leveled up fighting and everyone is impressed that he went from 0 to the 4th stage in just one night. After that Zueyuan admits defeat, but a guy who was watching gets very irritated. A mustachioed master cultivator appears and calls the teacher for an urgent task, and so the class ends. Then Xiaolan introduces himself to Unlin and offers help if they need it. He needed an item called spiritual stones to being able to complete a mission and didn't know what it was, but he took the opportunity to ask the guy. And by asking he discovered that this item was money. The crazy man begged without knowing any more. Zueyuan gave him a ring that was equivalent to 1,000 spiritual stones and even asked him to watch movie at his house. A girl called Sun also goes there and says that she saw the fight and that's why she asks to be their friend. Then the protagonist absorbs the coins to move on to the 7th stage. Now he gets much stronger and now he needed to participate in a battle royale that will take place at the gym and be among the top 50, and if he failed in this challenge the system would transform him into a woman, and then desperate he started asking his friends if they would be friends with him if he were a woman, and they start to think that he's getting high from cultivating, and back in his room he tells the system that he was going to do everything to increase his power and not turn into a woman. And so ends the first part of this summary. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see part 2.